as a penance, I decided to go ahead and do a full review of the Like a Dragon Yakuza Prime Video TV show. And on top of that, I'm not just doing one single review, just so that way I can just make it harder on myself and turn the knife. I decided I'm just going to go ahead and do all episodes, going to stick to the TV show. So from here on out, we're going to get nothing but spoilers. And as for the video game, we are obviously going to try our best to not be spoiler heavy. I'm always going to say the game is better. There hasn't been a movie or TV show adaptation, and yes, there is a movie. We might see a little hint of that throughout this particular review. And all of them are terrible, needless to say. So, but out of all of them, this is the better one of the bunch. And I feel this deserves it. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and get into Like a Dragon Yakuza Episode 1. And we already have our first red flag. Make that 2, actually. So basically, we are introduced to a portion of the main cast of characters. We have Nishiki, Kiryu, Miho, and Yumi doing a heist. Okay, so where to start first? We got 2 red flags right now. Let's start with the least abrasive of the 2. Let's go with Miho. Miho, we would later end up discovering that this is actually Nishiki's sister. Basically, all of them that I just mentioned are basically brother and sister because they all grew up in the Sunflower Orphanage. And basically, Yakuza did do a prologue, a live action prologue, so you get to see all the different brothers and sisters that Kiryu and Nishiki grew up with at the Sunflower Orphanage as kids. This live action prologue was done, to my understanding, by Sega, so it was Sega approved, all that stuff. And it's through here is where we actually get the name of Nishiki's sister, Yoko. And of course, with the TV show, for whatever reason, the name was changed to Miho. And not the biggest offense on the planet, but obviously with the Like a Dragon Yakuza purists, they are going to despise this. I think it's acceptable for what it is. Again, still a red flag though, because it does make me think, well, what else on down the line is there also going to be changed? So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and keep the red flag up. But then we have Yumi, of all people. Yumi. This is supposed to be your everyday girl. She's a sweetheart. And yet, for some reason, this normal everyday girl that everybody loves. Now, of course, I am going to try and be vague because play the game for the love of God. Save yourself of all this craziness. So, Yumi, she, for whatever reason, they decided to go on ahead and have her be a part of this heist. That is completely against the character that we all knew and loved from the video games. And so why the hell did they have Yumi do a heist? I would have no freaking clue. And this basically pissed me off for a good 5 minutes or so. When I eventually come to, and again, this is when I first watched the show. I have to watch it again for this review. Apparently, our group of delinquents, they are trying to steal money from an arcade. And this arcade is owned by the Tojo clan. The Tojo clan eventually find the delinquents, where they live, and And basically, Shitoro Kazuma puts an end to all of this. The delinquents and Shitoro Kazuma decide to all go to the Tojo clan headquarters. Shitoro Kazuma and the delinquents then go their separate ways. The delinquents are then brought forth in front of Dojima himself, and it's here that Dojima ends up saying a line in reference of your last meal. Now, for those that probably don't know, the last meal is a reference to an individual that was sentenced to death on death row, and basically they are going to receive capital punishment. Before the execution takes place, you end up, said individual would then have their choice of their last meal of their choosing before being sentenced to death. And so, with that line being said here, it's heavily implied that there's going to be an execution of the delinquents, or at the very least, an incredibly harsh punishment. And of course, Kiryu, being the most Kiryu as he possibly can, comes forth and says that it was actually his idea for the heist, and this was his way to try and show Dojima that he deserves to be in the Tojo clan. This does establish Kiryu as a character. Kiryu, from the game, absolutely would do something like this. And even in big and small ways, even in this scene, you can see Kiryu be the most Kiryu. When he's told, why don't you guys have something to eat? We got plenty of food here. Go ahead and eat. It's Kiryu that steps forth and proceeds to eat. Even faced with fear, dread, and despair, he still manages to push through those fears. And then, of course, Kiryu, trying to sacrifice himself, says, punish me. They had nothing to do with it. This was my idea. And so, much like Jesus himself sacrificing himself for our sins, I am going to actually no longer refer to Kazuma Kiryu as Kazuma or Kiryu from here on out. Instead, I am going to go ahead and refer to him throughout the rest of this review and beyond as Japanese Jesus. So, as Japanese Jesus proceeds to say that it was his idea and that he wants to join the Tojo clan, Nishiki jumps in and, of course, weasels his way into saying, I also want to join the Tojo clan as well. Much like how Nishiki in the game is jealous of how much charisma that Japanese Jesus has and shows his strength, traits that Japanese Jesus has, but no traits that Nishiki has. I think this is a great scene to establish both of these characters and where they land and where they sit. And pretty much I approve of all of this. So it is here that Japanese Jesus ends up mentioning that he always wanted to join the underground fighting world. To become the Dragon of Dojima?
I'll fight. To be the Dragon of Dojima. Oh my. That meaning isn't lost on you. Dragon of Dojima. He's the clan's winning fighter. Groomed for greatness. With the dragon, Dojima clan controlled Kamurocho. A pissant like you knows all that?
I'm sorry, I'm I think this counts as a red flag. Not only is it a red flag, but this scene here, it is without a doubt not only a red flag, this is a red flag soaked in urine. And for the love of God, maybe go throw that in the washing machine. And
When I came in to open up one morning, there you were with your head half in the toilet. Your hair was in the toilet water. Disgusting.
the wording here implies that if you go through the underground fighting tournaments, that you would end up becoming the Dragon of Dojima. And apparently there was a Dragon of Dojima before him, and he always wanted that tattoo, I think. I don't know what stretches they're trying to do here, but this is an ungodly stretch. This is bad. Like, for the love of God. Okay, first of all, let's maybe take a look at the tattoo, I guess. So, IRL, in real life, the Yakuza spend so much time getting their tattoo. They don't use any mechanical tattoo device, which is more predominantly used in most parts of the world today. But for the Japanese, specifically with the Yakuza, they want to stick to tradition. So they have to spend months, sometimes even years, to fully complete their tattoos. They have to spend time with their tattoo artist. And their tattoo is determined based on the stories they tell the tattoo artist, and I would have to assume the tattoo artist maybe has some idea of what kind of type of gods, deities, and other mythical lore and legends should be plastered on your skin. You could argue that the game wants to make things a little bit more simplified, so they probably go with a name of a character. They probably go by the traits and qualities of a character to dictate whether or not you should get this particular tattoo or not. So with Japanese Jesus Kiryu, you do have Ryu in the name. Ryu is the Japanese term for dragon. You could say it much begins and just starts there. So again, the game does keep it more simplified. But here, in the TV show, you mean to tell me completing an underground fighting tournament, that makes you the Dragon of Dojima? You mean to tell me that trying to show your strength to your boss through this fighting turn. Okay, to be fair, in that sense, I'm sure there's a way you could possibly show your strength to your boss through an underground fighting tournament, but I think you pick up on what I'm saying here. Like, not just you have to show your loyalty first to Dojima, and then maybe through Dojima seeing your strength, ye should be the dragon of our clan, kind of like the Dragon of Dojima. You earn the name. You don't just become the name. Needless to say, I think this is absolute dog shit. So the Tojo clan bring in the delinquents and Shitoro Kazuma, and they iron out more of the details of the said punishment. The girls are to work out their punishment by being hostess girls at Serena's. It's a bar, right? Because in the game, it's referred to as Serena's bar. And yet, for some reason, in the TV show, they call it Serena's club, and it's owned by the Tojo clan. I can believe that in the game it was always ran and operated within Dojima's grasp, perhaps someone else through the Tojo clan. That part I don't deny, but it's just I played the game. I remember Serena's bar as a bar, like it should be. A bar. It was a bar. It should always be a bar. Why the hell is it a club now? Needless to say, if you actually look at Serena's club, it's basically like a miniaturized version of the Grand in Yakuza. So personally, just to meet the writers halfway, I'm going to refer to Serena's as Serena's. But me and you both know this is a fucking bar. End of story. So the girls are supposed to work at Serena's, and Japanese Jesus is to go through a underground fighting match put forth by Dojima himself. Through the arcade heist, it is discovered that Shotaro Kazuma also got punishment for his end of not being able to handle his delinquent kids, and he ends up losing a pinky. Now, there is one problem with the TV show, and I think I need to bring it up here. In the TV show, we actually go to 2005. Throughout this entire review for each episode, everyone hated this, that you go and you bounce around from 95 to 2005. And I feel like to have some level of consistency, I think for these reviews, I'm actually going to be sticking to 1995 first, and then we will jump to 2005. This happens in pretty much every single episode, and we are going to not be bouncing around. In the show, we go to 2005, but for this review, we're going to go ahead and stick to 1995. So once the terms between the delinquents, along with Shotaro Kazuma and the Tojo clan, is all ironed out, underground fighting match was done later that night, and Japanese Jesus ends up going through the fight with some choice words from Shotaro Kazuma. I can only imagine what he said here in this scene.
Let me teach you the famous Bundy combo. Now, you stomp on your opponent's foot, you hit him with an uppercut.
You mean like this?
Atta girl! And next time, put your weight into it.
Japanese Jesus, I don't think that's actually how it's supposed to go down. And so the fight ends in double knockout, and Dojima ends up thinking that maybe there's something in Japanese Jesus that the Tojo clan could use. In the next scene, we actually see that Nishiki is actually denied joining the Tojo clan. But he is so determined to join that he ends up pulling out a spoon?
You call that a knife? This is a knife.
Armed with the spoon, Nishiki then decides to cut through his pinky, and it is through this action that Dojima decides to take in Nishiki as well. And with that, everything that took place in 1995 for episode 1 comes to an end. So now let's go to 2005. 2005, we actually find ourselves in prison, and Japanese Jesus is actually spending a little bit of time before he is actually let go. And we come across Dante. Detective Dante, as we all know from the video games, is investigating a particular case that is confusing him, bugging him. So he's trying to follow whatever clues he can and see what people could help him out in one way or another. And it turns out that there is a truck of 10 billion yen that goes missing that is owned by the Omi. And this is where we are brought forth with the $10 billion meme. I call this the $10 billion meme just simply because this goddamn thing is found throughout the entire Yakuza series, even when I think, oh yeah, we're done talking about the whole 10 billion yen. One way or another, there's always something within the game to where they bring up the $10 billion. And again, to refrain from spoiling anything with the game, here in the TV show, it was a truck that the Omi had and owned, and they were transporting 10 billion yen. There ultimately was a heist that took place, and the Omi truck was ambushed, and the 10 billion yen meme is now missing. Of course, this creates a bunch of problems and issues for the Omi because they heavily believe that the Tojo clan is actually behind this particular ambush. And if this isn't ironed out, the Omi is going to have all-out war with the Tojo clan. It also is discovered that Dante also went to go see Nishiki to see what information that he knew about the truck as well. And once Dante ends up leaving, Nishiki ends up with some information that he ends up discovering. There's actually a video of the ambush, and there is one person that is identified. And one person that is identified tied to the ambush of the 10 billion yen meme, it turns out to be an individual by the name of Aiko. We would later end up discovering that this Aiko is actually Yumi's sister. And once Japanese Jesus is actually trying to get out of prison, he also ends up saying that he has zero plans going back to Kamurocho, and he takes out some Yakuza guys that wanted to give him a little bit of a welcoming party. He dispatched them pretty quickly. And then stealing their car, he ends up discovering a cell phone in a plastic bag. And Detective Dante informs Japanese Jesus that you may want to reconsider coming back to Kamurocho because he also ends up discovering that Aiko is tied to the $10 billion meme. He's going to Kamurocho. As we close out the first episode, we end with Yumi escaping a kidnapping as we fade to black. And that is the very first episode of the series. This setup does kind of feel a little weird doing this. I normally don't do scripts when it comes to my channel. I just kind of shoot from the hip and just kind of edit my way around everything. So doing this is very, very different. So, and I do need a script because, like, I need to remember exactly what all took place throughout the entire show. I can't just shoot from the hip on this one. I actually kind of need precise detail and everything else. Hope you stick around and join me for episode 2, and as we continue this particular story. I will say, even though that I'm probably shitting on everything and making a lot of wink wink nudge nudge, if you haven't noticed throughout this particular review, yeah, I'm just kind of having fun with this. I really don't care about any of this. I really don't want to do this review to some degree because there's kind of like a lot going on. So I don't know when this review is going to go out. I also don't know because I'm going to be starting a second channel, and I'm really going to start kicking things into high gear soon, at least at the time of this recording. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So links in the description below to support me and my channel. Really do appreciate all of those that do. And I'm out of here. Born to lose, live to win. I love you guys. See you guys in the next one. Later.